That's right.
Speaking of articles, there was a, to me anyway, thought-provoking article by one of our old-time columnists, Paul Naismith. Haven't heard from him in a while. He's back in Scotland working. His article was called Managing Motivation, a Quality Alternative to Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, in which Naismith takes issue, as many have, with the validity of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a motivational model. Now, if you aren't familiar with Maslow's theory of a human's hierarchy of needs, here is a diagram of his famous needs pyramid, which, by the way, his theory was originally published in 1943 as a theory of human motivation. Now, if we just look at it, the basic idea here, oh, that's interesting. There,
psychological. Wow.
Physiological.
Physiological.
I don't know what's going on there. Physiological. That basically, the idea behind Maslow's needs is that they build on each other, and you need to build up on this pyramid. So the first thing we all need, according to Maslow, is our physiological needs taken care of. We're talking, food, water, just the things you need to stay alive. Next is safety, things like physical safety. You don't want to be shot at by arrows or bullets. This could also include things like job security. Next would be belonging, kind of the social aspect, including maybe work. Esteem, am I valued? And finally, self-actualization, a desire to accomplish everything that one can. So not everybody agrees with this, and remember, this is a 70-year-old theory, and so a lot of people disagree with it. They think it's very ethnocentric. But from a management perspective, you could look at this as, what do I need to do as a manager to help employees at each level so as to help motivate them? So, for instance, obviously, pay a living wage, acknowledge them. That kind of might meet the emotional needs. Train them or encourage them. Those might deal with the emotional or the self-actualization. So, give them a safe work environment. So, it kind of ties into all of that. And if you do all that, the theory says that you'll be building on those needs and you'll have a motivated employee. Right. Now, in his article, Naismith disagrees with using Maslow's needs, as many have. And he says he prefers to look at motivation along the lines that Christy Hedges did in her Forbes article, 8 Common Causes of Workplace Demotivation, in which she notes that common reasons for demotivation in the workplace kind of fall in 8 distinct areas, and she lists them like this. You've got micromanagement, lack of progress, job insecurity, no confidence in the company leadership, lack of recourse for poor performance, poor communication, unpleasant co-workers, and boredom. I actually think Naismith may have misunderstood Maslow a bit, because, and I say this because of one thing that Naismith says in his article. He says management schools would encourage you to assess yourself against Maslow's pyramid and determine if you are deficient in any needs. If you are deficient, in other words, putting the blame on the employee. But I don't think those who look to Maslow's needs as a guideline for motivation necessarily look at it that way. It's more, where are we deficient as managers in meeting those employee needs? And this is kind of quickly borne out if you research Maslow's needs and management motivation or the like. Now, that said, I do agree with Hedges, just as Naismith does. Her 8 items are actually right on the money, and also happen to fit in with more of Maslow's categories, but that's just my own personal observation. I don't see a whole lot of difference there. Essentially what Maslow or Hedges or pretty much any organizational psychologist will tell you is that, hey, guess what? Employees have needs.
People are people.
People are people.
That's right.
They've got personal needs. It is not just about the wage, although that is important. You got to have a living wage. And maybe it's not even about the order of those needs, whatever those needs are. It's just the needs themselves. Employees want to be valued. People want to be valued. They usually want to feel part of a group and to be able to get along with coworkers. So in other words, they want to have a nice work environment. They want to be able to grow in their job and to stretch their wings, self-actualization, and so forth. It is the job of managers as much as possible to create a culture, a workspace, an environment, whatever you want to call it, where those needs can be met. And doing that is a huge part of motivating employees so that going to work isn't a grind, but maybe perhaps, an enjoyable experience. If you got to be there, you got to want to enjoy it. And if you enjoy your job to some extent, as much as possible, you are motivated to do a better job. As, oh my gosh, it's another drudge work. I'm just going to punch the clock and phone it in, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. People are these vulnerable parts of your operating system, really, and you have to not just manage them, but you have to really care for them in a way. I mean, we don't want to be overly touchy-feely here, you know.
Right.
I mean, this idea of that we need to have a supportive workplace. You know, that's in ISO's
Right.
language now. A little bit has been given poked some holes in, and has been criticized a little bit. But there's some truth there that
because it helps the bottom line.
Well, it does.
It's in your own self-interest.
It is, and that's what I was going to say is that there's a real motivation here. You're playing on that title. There's a real motivation here from the organizational perspective to have happy employees. Happy employees are more productive employees.
Less turnover.
Less
absenteeism.
Yes, and more productivity. And
more productivity.
To do better work. I mean, I know this myself. I mean, when I feel like I'm engaged in something and that I've been given the freedom to, within the framework of the company, build it in the way that I know I'm going to respond best to, I'm going to do good work with that. I'm going to feel like I'm invested in it, and I'm going to own it, and it's going to be better.
And by the way, unions won't like hearing this, but it has been borne out in a lot of examples that happy employees will stay on the job for less money.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Just
money,
saying.
Yeah, money is the lowest common denominator, but it's not really, as we talk about motivation and the hierarchy of needs, it's not really at the very top of that. It's part of it. It's a big part of it, but it's not the only thing. And to say you're just going to throw the money at the problem and reward somebody with cash if they're unhappy, it's a Band-Aid, but it's not going to be a long-term solution.
Yeah, exactly.
And these are people. These aren't automated. I mean, we're not yet in the environment where all workforces are all automated. I mean, it's like, there's people doing this work.
People doing
You got to respect them for that. All right. Thanks, Dirk. All right.